You didn't have to do it, but you did. Oh, and I wasn't worthy of any of it. I'll never be able to repay you for all you've done. Oh, oh.
Let heaven and earth declare your name. Your name is great and greatly to be praised. All glory and honor is due your name. We reverence your great name. We will call on your name. Call on your great name. Call on your name. Call on your great heavens and earth. Majesty and power. All glory and honor. We reverence. We will call on your name. Call on your great name. Call on your name. Call on. Let us call on the name of the Lord. Call on the name of the Lord. Call on the name of the Lord. He is good. You say, call on. Call on the name of the Lord. We will call on the name. He is good. Jesus, my Savior. Jesus, we will call on your name. Oh, Jesus, my healer. Jesus, we will call on your name. Jesus, oh, Jesus, we will call on your name. Jesus, you're my deliverer. Jesus, we will call on your name. Jesus, my Savior. Jesus, we will call on your name. There's power in your name. Jesus, I love calling on your name. Yeah. There's no greater name than Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is healing in the name of, power in the name of, deliverance in the name of. Yeah, I feel healing in my body. I feel healing in my body. Nothing stays the same when I call on your name. The atmosphere is shifting. Oh, I feel your spirit moving. Nothing stays the same when I call on your name. Yeah, yeah. Jesus, I love calling on that name. Yeah. There is no greater name. Yeah, I will in the name of. I dare somebody to lift your hands.
Mabel Randall is on the Glory, 980 AM WDDO. Don't miss Mabel Randall every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Don't miss this amazing show only on the Glory, 980 AM WDDO. Be sure to check out On with Don. On with Don, weekdays from 11 a.m. until 3 p.m. with the best in gospel music on 980 a.m. WDDO, The Glory. Roscoe's tour buses are moving safely. Do you have a church group, family reunion, or just a Saturday getaway? Roscoe's Tours is waiting to book your travel today. Local and distance trips. Clean, reliable buses ready to go. Call Roscoe's Tours today at 404-304-5600. That's 404-304-5600. Roscoe's Tour Buses.
A lot of things have changed over the past 50 years. A lot of things have changed over the past few months. We haven't changed. We're still here for you. Dozier Law Firm. Call us. We might be able to help you.
Unique 2 Auto Detailing, serving Middle Georgia for 30 years. Looking for a Christian-owned and operated place to take your vehicle for detailing? Unique 2 Auto Detailing is the place for you. Full detailing, wet sanding, wash and wax, buffing, auto sale, auto paint and body. Bring your vehicle today at 859 MLK Boulevard in Macon. Unique 2 Auto Detailing with a professional and friendly staff. Call today at 478-738-0809. That's 478-738-0809. Unique 2 Auto Detailing, the place you leave with a glorious smile.
Vertice Zero Zier is on the new 107.9 FM and 980 AM WDDO, The Glory. Connecting the community through gospel.
The new 107.9 FM, W300EB.
Macon and WDDO 980 AM
Perry.
Macon. Connecting the community through gospel.
The new 107.9 FM, W300EB.
Macon and WDDO 980 AM
Perry.
Macon.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of the Glory 980 AM, the Glory Media Group, LLC, WDDO AM, its staff, management, or advertisers, but are the views and opinions of the participants of the broadcast.
All right, I guess that's our signal. We hear that music, right? That's our signal to start talking.
Ask Elaine, where to ask Elaine. Ask Elaine, where to ask Elaine.
Welcome to Ask Elaine. This is your voice, Commissioner Elaine Lucas, welcoming you to the show. If you've tuned in on AM, FM, or you're right here with us on the Glory Live, we welcome you. We're so happy to have you there. We want to welcome Susan Smith. Good afternoon to you. And Hildred Jones, who has joined us. You're in for a treat. You're going to get all kinds of information today. Our guest, well, before we introduce our guest, we want to give a bunch of people a chance to get in. You know, they're just now thinking, oh, it's 3:00. I've got to tune in to Ask Elaine. I've got to tune in and get smarter. I've got to tune in and find out what's going on, the latest, what's going on in Middle Georgia as far as the election and what's going on nationally. Is Kamala Harris going to be here in Macon anytime soon? She's going to be in Savannah. So is she going to stop on her way going through? Because you got to take 16 down that way. I guess that's the way that you would travel going to Savannah. So got a lot of information for you today. Not necessarily on those topics, but we've got a lot of information for you on the Democratic Party. All of you know I'm a Democrat. I've offered for political office, and I've always run as a Democrat, even when we have nonpartisan, and I've run for the county commission. I have always made it known that I'm proud to offer as a Democrat. And so we want to, first of all, express our condolences to the families of those who've lost loved ones. We want to especially express our condolences to the family of the late Natalie Calloway, who was a 40 plus year employee of Macon-Bibb County. She worked in municipal court and just a superb professional, knew her job, helped train others, was a big supporter of a lot of things good in Macon. Bibb County, and just a very faithful, longtime member of Ebenezer Missionary Baptist Church. Um, and it's kind of sad because we paid our respects to her husband a few weeks ago. He passed away just a few weeks ago, and now we've lost Natalie. And so we want to express our condolences to all of the people who knew her and those who didn't, because it certainly is a loss for Macon-Bibb County. And we also want to express our condolences to the families of anybody else who's lost a loved one. Um, that's a pain that kind of stays with you. It can come and go. It just can take all kinds of forms, but we certainly express our condolences. And we want to express congratulations to those who have happy events going on. We certainly don't want to leave those out. So, thank you so much for being here today, whether you've tuned in on AM, FM, or if you're right here with us on the Glory Live. Now we're going to go to our very special guest. We see one creeping in. Our first very special guest is Dr. Tom Ellington, who is he is a former city council member. He's a professor. Uh, uh, on the faculty of Wesleyan College. And I'm going to call on him and let him tell you a little bit more about himself. But we know him now as a community leader, one who's devoted to the Democratic Party, one who's not afraid to take a stand, and he does. And he's now serving as a member from the Democratic Party to the Macon-Bibb Board of Elections. And he's going to tell us all about a lot of the things that are going on with the election. And so we want to thank him for tuning in. Dr. Ellington, welcome to Ask Elaine.
Thank you so much for having me here. And not to ruin the surprise, but our other guest, of course, is Senator Lucas. And it's always delightful to see him.
Yeah, he's always got some things to share, and I have a feeling from the look in his eyes, he's got some new information that he's going to share with us today. So welcome. We're glad you could make it.
Thank you.
All right. Now, Dr. Ellington.
Yes, well, it is election season. We are in full swing. Voter registration is still open right now and will be into October. But now is the time to be checking and making sure that you're registered, that your address is current, that there's not a problem. You can do that at Secretary of State's My Voter page, just with your first initial, last name, and date of birth. And so even if you're confident you're registered, this is a good time to double check because there's still time to do something about it. If you know somebody who is not registered, you can certainly have them fill out a paper form. Also, if they have a Georgia driver's license, they can do that online at the Secretary of State's office without even filling out a form if they have internet access. So that's one thing, is making sure that everybody is properly registered so that they can exercise the franchise when early voting opens up or on election day, depending on when people prefer to vote. So that's crucial. As a member of the Board of Elections, I see my job as being making sure that we have smoothly running elections where everybody who is legally able to exercise the franchise is able to gain easy access to that right. And so
you did say easy access.
the more we can ease that, the better.
Uh-huh.
And there are rules and laws in place that are challenges, which is why people have to work so hard to make sure that they and their neighbors and their families all are registered, have a way to get to the polls, and all of that. So, you know, a lot of what I do as a board member involves dealing with what the law says must happen.
Mhm.
And so it's not a matter of preference, it's a matter of duty. But I also individually have some definite preferences, and my strong belief has consistently been that we need to make it as easy as possible to exercise the franchise. And unfortunately, there are people who disagree with that.
That's right. That's right. That's right. We want to welcome Wade Horton. And Wade, I understand you had a tough time at the Macon Transit Authority meeting. Someone called and told me that you and your cousin were very much disrespected at the meeting with someone there who's a hired person disrespecting you and your cousin there. We'll have you talk about that in a little while. But good afternoon to you, and we want to welcome Hildred Jones and Susan Smith, of course. Y'all hit like and share so that you'll be reminding some others who didn't remember to tune in that Ask Elaine is on the air. This is your Talk and Information weekly talk and information program. This is your voice, Commissioner Elaine Lucas, and we welcome you once again to the show. Our very special guest are Dr. Tom Ellington, who's a college professor and also serves as a member representing the Democratic Party on the Board of Elections. And we also have Senator David Lucas, who has served almost 50 years as a member of the state legislature. And next year, he'll be going into serving his 50th year. He's the longest serving legislator who's in office now. And so we're very proud of him. We're proud of both of our guests because they have a lot of information to share. Wade Horton says you're a great man.
Well,
Did you see that comment?
I did see that, and those are very kind words from Mr. Horton. I used to serve on the Transit Authority board.
Yeah, that's
and,
right. You sure did.
He certainly was a regular during public comments and was certainly trying to make sure that our ridership was well served.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you listened to him. You didn't yell at him and disrespect him in the meetings, did you?
I've never had cause to yell at Mr. Horton.
Right, no. That's right.
I think he may have been frustrated with me a time or two, but we've always had a good relationship.
Yeah. Okay, now let's go back to the fair, safe, smooth elections. The one of the duties, the main duty of the Board of Elections is to ensure that.
That's
How
right.
are you doing that?
I mean, we are working with our staff. Our full-time staff does the heavy lifting. The board sets policy directions. We steer the ship, but they're the ones who get us there. And so we're working on some things like improving access for the new Macon Mall location. We're attempting to find a better spot for a voting machine during early voting so that if you have physical limitations and come to the mall, that you don't have to make that long trek all the way to the office. And that was not possible in May or June because of construction that was still going on. But we're trying to get that location perfected as a spot for people to be able to vote and also just interact with the Board of Elections. We're also working on formulating a policy for dealing with voter challenges, because since SB 202, mass voter challenges have come to be rather frequent. And we've had a couple of instances of that here in Macon-Bibb County. And we're in a quiet period mandated by federal law, the National Voter Registration Act, right now. But I don't anticipate that the November election is going to mean an end to those challenges. So we need to have a firm policy in place that gives us a rational basis for how we deal with those challenges consistently and in keeping with the rights of the voters whose right to vote is challenged.
Right. Many of you will recall several programs we have talked about the Republican plot to interfere with elections, and they're trying and doing everything that they can. And we're going to ask the senator in a little bit to tell us about what Democrats are doing locally and statewide to challenge the folks who are on the state board of elections who are passing laws at this late, passing rules.
Yeah, let's be clear with that
Yeah.
distinction, because they don't
Yeah.
have the power to pass laws.
Right,
They have
right.
the power to enact rules that are consistent with state law.
Okay,
And some
let's
of what they're
talk about
doing
those then.
appears to be inconsistent.
First of all, they had a meeting, and apparently it violated the law.
They had a
on
meeting
meetings.
that was pretty clearly a violation of the Open Meetings Act. It was called at the last minute. It was not properly noticed, and their general counsel advised the members of that board
Not to
that it was
do.
not a legal meeting,
Mhm.
and they proceeded anyway.
These are your state board of elections. That's that group that there are appointments made. How the governor appoints.
The governor appoints one.
The state
Senate
Senate.
and state house make appointments, and the parties make appointments.
Right.
And right now, what we have is a situation where former members left, and they have been replaced by election deniers. So there's a slate of 3 election denying Republicans that is a majority of that board. And when I say election deniers, don't think that that's hyperbole, don't think that's an exaggeration. One of their actions that they've taken this summer is that they requested that the Attorney General open an investigation into the 2020 election, as if that has not been investigated
So
up and
many
down,
times.
back and forth so
Yeah.
many times.
Yeah.
The Attorney General fortunately said, well, that's not really within your power, and no, I'm not going to do that.
Well, at least there are some guardrails in place. However, we have to remain vigilant at all times and counteract what's going on. I was listening to the radio coming to the station, and I heard where the Democratic Party was investing, I think it was $10 million to provide attorneys to counteract all of the lawsuits and the legal maneuvering that the Republican Party is undertaking here right before the election. Because, folks, it's my belief that the Republicans know that there's a strong possibility that you're going to go vote and they're going to lose. And so the Republican candidate for president has said, y'all don't even have to vote, because the other part that he's not saying is we're going to try and put in place a plan to steal this election. We're going by hook or by crook. That's what we're going to do. We had a few comments. Good afternoon, Kimberly Houston, and welcome to Ask Elaine. Pastor Lisa Watson is on. We're not surprised at anything that the Republicans do. They're following their leader. Absolutely correct. Patrick Davis says, why is there still a discrepancy between the local commission map on the Bibb government website and the Georgia MVP page? And he gives some examples of some discrepancies on the page. If the election supervisor won't fix it, why can't the elections board fix this? Many voters in the May 21 election, mostly Black, were in the wrong county commission district. Would you speak to that?
Absolutely, and I'm glad that he raised this issue, because it's an important one, and it's one that we need to get right. And so we've directed the supervisor to basically go through the entire voter file and make sure that each voter is in the correct combination based on the current districts as they're currently constituted. And so that is in process. We should have that completed soon. I'm going to be checking in with the office again on Monday But we want to make sure that there's not a repeat of the experience that some people did have back in May. It was not enough to change the outcome of any elections, but
Right.
that's not the that's not the standard. The standard is that every voter, when they go to vote early or go to their polling place, they should get the proper ballot with all of the offices that they're entitled to vote for on it. And anything short of that's unacceptable.
Okay. So, and Patrick, thank you so much for asking that, because that needed to be stated. People needed to hear, because there were a number of people who had concerns, and you validated the fact that there were some things that were out of place during that election. But Board of Elections, as Dr. Ellington says, worked really, really hard and will continue to monitor. If you have questions or comments, would you please place them in the chat? If you want to call us, 478-250-1444 is the number to call, and we will be glad to have you to state your question or concern. 478-250-1444. Now, Senator, can you tell us what's being done on the state level in light of all the things that are happening in the state? There are some places like here in Macon where we've got a Board of Elections that's attentive and able to counteract some of the things that are going on that the Republicans are throwing out there. But on the statewide level, what's being done for the benefit of all the citizens of the state of Georgia?
Well, number one, I was going to file an action against the Board of Election this week, the state Board of Election. And come to my surprise that a member of the legislature, William Magnum, filed an action on the Board of Elections about the ethical charges on those three members who are election deniers that are on the Board of Elections. So we're working at it. One of the other things that we were working on is that somebody could go in and change your voter registration. And so we had a meeting with the Secretary of State, and they are working on that to make sure that nobody can call in and act as though they are you and cancel your registration.
They really ought to just suspend that.
I dream of the day when we don't have a Secretary of State who exposes my social security number on the open web.
Right.
But the last time we had a Secretary of State who did not do that, I think, was Kathy Cox.
Yeah. You're right. You're right. And some of the things that ought to be just simple common sense things, anything that raises a doubt in voters' minds is a problem. And so it ought to be dealt with. And it seems like that Raffensperger would understand that they're not his friend either. They kicked him off of the leadership of the State Board of Elections.
He used to be chair, and now he's not on that board at all.
Yeah. And then Trump calls him and says, I want you to find me 11,700, whatever the number was, of votes. And then he was fortunate enough that it was taped, an associate of his taped it. And so you have to give him credit for that. But he's still doing things that are not in line with what someone should do to ensure fair and safe election.
Go ahead, Senator Lucas.
Well, one of the problems is that when he did that, Republicans, who are the majority of the legislature, decide to take away some of his powers when he went on the air and had Donald Trump telling him to find 11,000 votes.
Yeah.
And they were mad with that. And so they called themselves taking away some of his authority. The thing that we have to do is to be diligent as to look out for these kinds of things, because it affects people of color. And that is what the Republicans are trying to do, is to make it harder for people of color to vote. And the understanding is that you got John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock as United States senators. and they were voted on by the entire state. And Georgia's a
It's
challenging
purple. It
state
is.
because we are getting new folks in, and the population
Yeah.
is changing.
Yeah, we've gotten several 100,000 additional citizens over the last few years, and they're black and brown. Or there are folks who don't think like some of the traditional folks from the state of Georgia are thinking. So that's a fear that the Republican Party has, that this state is bluer than they think it is. So they're putting in place every obstacle. But how do you dismantle that kind of stuff? You make sure you go and vote.
Right. And let me put my academic hat on for
Go
a minute
ahead.
here.
Go ahead.
So if we look back at the last two censuses, those are the first times the black proportion of Georgia's population has actually risen since the beginning of the Great Migration back in the beginning of the 20th century. So we're seeing black and brown people come back and make a home here.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Patrick is saying new rules in Georgia governing how local officials finalize the votes, that's certifying the vote totals, have some election watchdogs worried that loyalists of former President Donald Trump could trigger a crisis if he loses the state in November by abusing their authority to delay or avoid certifying results. And many of the boards of elections in Georgia have pushed back against that and said this will cause us undue hardship. It'll delay us getting our results in. Speak to that.
Sure. And I think Senator Lucas could speak to this as well as I can, and perhaps better. But there's two big things that that Republican majority on state election board has been pushing. And one of those is to give local boards of elections the power to conduct, quote, reasonable investigations before certifying the election. So that's a rule that they've proposed. And that comes into conflict, as I understand it, with state law, because state law gives state boards of or local boards of elections a ministerial duty to certify the tallies. It says we shall certify by the deadline,
which means you got to do it.
Do it. There's not discretion there. Right. It's a duty. So that's one thing. Another thing is that they have been pushing for hand counting of ballots on election night at the polling place before those are transported to the central location. And that's going to impose an enormous burden on poll workers. It's going to introduce uncertainty if it happens, because the hand counts are actually, believe it or not, less accurate than machine counts. You've got to imagine people who have already been there 12 hours going through and doing a hand tally, not just for president and vice president, but for every office and every question that's on that ballot to get those numbers. We know that the machines actually do a good job counting because it's been audited. Both in 2020 and 2022, subsequent to the election, there were audits in which a careful hand count of ballots was done to make sure that matched up. But the difference there is that there was not the same tight deadline and that you didn't have temporary workers involved with this at the end of a very, very long election day. So if those rules end up being promulgated, I would anticipate litigation on both of those. I don't pretend to have a crystal ball to know how that litigation would come out, but with the rule regarding a reasonable investigation, my understanding of my duties as a member of that board is that state law still says that that board shall certify by the deadline.
Right. So what are you hearing from people around the state or at the state level?
Well, Dr. Ellison is correct. And that was the reason that the injunction was filed against those board members who are election deniers, even trying to place that rule in, as well as go back and reinvestigate Fulton County, which has already been done. And so we understand what the challenge is. Uh, what we have to do is get out and vote. And what I would tell folks, that if you moved in the last couple of weeks to a new address, that you go by the Board of Elections and let them know your new address and ask them what district you're in, period. And they will be able to tell you based on your address. And so those are things that are necessary for us to have uh, fair elections.
Well, citizens have to be vigilant in checking. You know that somebody's out to try and take your vote away. And there are people who are in place helping to safeguard your vote, but you've got to do your part too. So every day, I checked my voter status yesterday. I'm going to check it every week on through the election and after that as well, because I know that the Republicans want to take away my right to vote. If I were you, I would not let that happen. All you got to do, you're on your phone for everything else. Check your voter status. Check it as often as you want to. There are only like 4 bits of information that you have to enter, and then submit it, and then you will get feedback as to whether you're active, and then you can also see where you vote, what districts you're in for voting for commission and for state rep, for senator, for water board that I'm running for. And this, I guess, is the good enough time to throw that out there.
Well, I'm looking at it. We used to have 2 governments, city of Macon and the county. And the city had an appointment to the water board in the county. Now you don't have a county, you have a consolidated government. And you have 2 that are appointed. I'm going to propose that only one be appointed and that other one be elected position. Right now, you got 4 water board districts.
1, 2, 3, and 4.
And the population is 37,500.
Almost 40,000 people per
commission district. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's right and fairly that we have another elected representative to the water board. They got more money than the county. They get splash money. They got the 499. They get federal money. And they're doing things that I don't think are kosher, and especially to citizens. And they're using, I'm the big boy and you the little boy. And so you got to do what I say do. And I've talked about the ABC liquor store situation.
Right.
And I was told that it's a private matter. And my response to that, it wasn't private when you cut the water off. You said the lateral line at that store was going into the storm water rather than to the waistline, which is across the street. And so we're going to work on that. But
has the owner of the liquor store gotten any relief at all?
None.
Has there been any cooperation?
None.
From
the water is cut off.
So what you are proposing is when the new legislative session begins, that you are going to propose looking again at the water board, the makeup of it. It has 7 members. The chair of the water board is elected countywide. And then there are 4 other elected positions, districts 1, 2, 3, and 4. And each one of those districts has 40,000 residents.
Right.
And 45. You're proposing to take some of that territory and draw a 5th district to be elected.
That's right. And
which will reduce the numbers of people that each water board member is expected to represent. Water is quite important. You go to your house and you turn the faucet on and that water doesn't come out, you got a crisis. People will realize the importance of it then. It becomes very important. Or you flush and it does not work. Then you realize the importance of it. But let's do something. Just the senator is bringing up these possibilities and these changes that maybe need to be made. Then let's start thinking about the Water Authority. And indeed, their budget is greater than Macon Bibb. Macon Bibb's budget is what, 200 million?
Mm-hmm.
It's grown over the years, and it's all your money. So, for an entity that handles the kind of money, well over 200 million of your tax dollars, it's yours too on the Water Authority. And so we think that there's a need, and we're going to support the legislative efforts if y'all undertake that.
Well, the thing you have to realize is that the Macon Bibb Water and Sewer Authority was created in 1974. That legislation says that they take over all properties and all liabilities. Give you a good example. Terry Carter pipe was used most of the time. They break up. Trees grow through them. Therefore, folks have to spend $5,000, $7,000 to redo it to connect.
If it's their responsibility.
To the line. But that was done years ago. Same thing that happened to the ABC liquor store. The only permit you find is it was built in 1962. And for 60 years, that lateral line has been going into storm water, which is supposed to go to the sewage line, which is across the street. Nobody knew about it until the Department of Transportation came down and saw a dip in the road after they researched. And they ran cameras down there and they found out what the problem was and told the water board it's on your side because the lateral line comes out that way. And so what we need to understand is people are having problems. You got to remember First Street was blocked off. The pipes were corroded and they had to go in and fix all those pipes. None of those folks paid any money to do that. The medical center didn't pay any money to do that. Businesses on First Street didn't pay any money to do that. That came through the Water and Sewage Authority. So therefore, citizens ought to have the same right if those problems happen. And then they're going to say, it's your liability, it's your responsibility. No, it's not. It's the Water and Sewer Authority responsibility because they took over the Macon City Water Commission.
That it is the responsibility of the Macon Water Authority to fix all of the water system.
That is absolutely correct.
And since citizens are required to pay $4.99 per month, that's added to your water bill, plus under the SPLOST, some of the SPLOST proceeds, millions of your dollars go into the repairs and upgrades for Macon Bibb. And so we see it as a situation where the citizens ought to prevail because they're paying every month. I know I pay that $4.99 every month. There's a $4.99 on that and some other places too, so I pay more than $4.99. Patrick says this year there have been isolated examples of Black incumbents winning local races, and Trump Republicans said ran to Superior Court, which is controlled by MAGA Republicans. One example in Fitzgerald with the school board, and another in Waycross, the city commission. So if there are close elections, there's a chance the election could be vacated or a new election ordered. That is why we're going to have to do our job and get out and cast our vote. I am suggesting that people go vote early. Tell us about the early voting sites, Doc.
3 sites there in Nursery Park, the Elaine Lucas Senior Center, and the Board of Elections office at Macon Mall. Whichever one is most convenient to you is the one to go to. I generally go to the Elaine Lucas Senior Center, not just because it's named after my friend.
You do.
But it's also close to where I live, and generally I'm in and out of there pretty quickly. I like to go very early in the process so that I know that that's taken care of. I don't want to get to election day and find out that I woke up with a fever or that there's something wrong with my car or anything like that. So I like to lock in my vote early. But the important thing is that you do vote. If you wait till election day, then you need to make sure that you know what precinct you go to, because on election day, you have to go to the precinct to which you were assigned in order to be able to vote.
So let's go vote early. Those 3 sites are so convenient. I go to the senior center too. We usually go together and cast our vote. Take family members with you. And if you have any kind of concern about being able to read the ballot or if you have any kind of issues with, you can have someone to stand with you and assist you in casting your vote. Now, they can't be in there all talking, and doing a whole lot of stuff with anybody that would disturb any of the voters, but you can have assistance if you feel, and anybody can assist you in a federal, since this is a federal election, you can assist up to 10 people to vote, because people ask me all the time if I would drive them and assist them with it, and they tell me who they want to vote for, and I show them where that person's name is, and they do it. Now, absentee voting is still in place, but with the mess with our postal system, I'm just not going to trust it. I'm not going to trust absentee.
If you're going to vote absentee, go ahead and make your request as soon as possible.
As soon.
I would fill the ballot out, and I would not put it back in the mail. I would bring it to the drop box at the Board of Election office in Macon Mall.
And you can also have a close relative to deliver it to the drop box at Macon Mall. So we got that covered. But if at all possible, if you're able-bodied, please vote early at one of those sites. You got a brand spanking new site in the Macon Mall. You'll be inside no matter what the weather is. That's what I love. Be inside. There are benches periodically placed periodically in there so that you can sit if you need to for that time and then get up and keep your place in line. I'm going to suggest too that folks get a number when they go in, just in case they have to get out of line and sit down. Then that number could be called. The tax commissioner's office has a numbering system that works very, very well. And, when your number is called, then you step up and take care of your business. But anyway, that brand spanking new facility out at the Macon Mall was paid for by taxpayers' money, your money. And so that's one option. Theranossery Recreation Center is another one. And the Senior Citizen Center in Carolyn Creighton Park is the third one. And so for 3 weeks prior to the election, November 5th, you can go and cast your ballot. And so there is no excuse, none at all. Now,
another thing
go ahead
that we are looking at is a third term by the mayor. You need to understand what's being asked for. I was approached, and my conversation was, if you want a third term, then take term limits off the county commission. We're the only consolidated government that has term limits on the commission. And so I think that if you're going to do one, you might as well do the other.
Well, and it's going to be a legislative function. The legislature will be the one, our legislative delegation.
So you need to let us know.
Yeah, you need to. There will be a meeting that the legislators usually y'all have in December before going back into session.
That's right.
I don't know how it's going to be.
Last time it was on Zoom.
Yeah, it needs to be in person so that people will have an opportunity to come, and y'all need to listen to what people have to say. They don't need to have to write stuff down. They don't need to have to jump through hoops. They need to be able to talk with the legislative delegation, and we need to be asking them what their position is on these things that you brought up. The I've heard staggering of terms too, because at any given time with the commissioners, you could have fruit basket turnover. You could have a new commissioner in every slot. Some people might like that, but
you lose some institutional knowledge
you
that way,
lose it.
though.
Yeah.
So this also relates to a question that Don Druitt asked in the chat a little while ago,
Oh, I missed that.
with regard to having municipal elections or commission elections in November rather than May. And that's also something that would be in the jurisdiction of the local delegation. For those of you who recall, when the consolidation charter was first proposed, the proposal involved partisan elections for mayor and commissioners. That's what was on the ballot. That's what was voted for. And then right after that, the new Republican majority on that
redid it.
They pulled a bait and switch.
That's
and
right.
changed to nonpartisan elections,
Right.
which also moved the election to May. This actually got the Justice Department's attention. There was an injunction to prevent the original May election in 2013. But then Shelby County versus Holder happened,
Yeah.
and pre-clearance went away. And basically, there was nobody locally with the deep pockets to finance Voting Rights Act litigation. But Mr. Druitt's absolutely right that turnout is higher in November, and it's particularly higher among minority groups. And that's not a secret.
Right.
So that is something that absolutely would be a valid concern. When we were sold on consolidation, one thing we were also promised was that it would be more efficient because you wouldn't have to have a separate election for mayor. You could have it right at the same time as presidential elections, and then that has never happened.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, that's right.
That was by design.
Yeah, there were a lot of things that were put in that basket for called consolidation, and we all opposed consolidation because we could see all of those different things. I think we were on a panel together, or you were on a panel attended where the pros and cons of consolidation were discussed.
I thought that the charter was worse than the status quo, which
Yeah.
is why I opposed it. I did not convince the majority of my fellow citizens to see things the same way. But
they're finding out now.
Oh yeah, they come every day talking about, well, we didn't know what y'all were talking about with that consolidation. It sure is bad, but it's in place. It is in place.
it's in place, but that doesn't mean that we can't improve the charter to make
Absolutely.
the situation better.
Right. We had a question from Patrick a while back. How much federal funding does the Macon Water Authority receive? And how has the Infrastructure Act, the Biden Infrastructure Act, y'all, signed by Biden, impact Bibb County? I don't know the exact figure of
It's
federal
a lot of money.
monies, but it's a lot of it. The Biden administration is very pro environment. And the major legislation that's come out of Washington has been pushing us in the direction of saving our earth and having natural resources that were in good enough shape for us to have those resources, have the use of those resources for years and years to come. So I would think that there's a lot of federal funding that is available to our water authority. And I do believe they receive quite a bit. But what I will do, Patrick, I will check, because I've already asked for last year's budget. I've got to go back and check that, and I'll have that information for you at our, ask Elaine next week. And as far as the Infrastructure Act, I know that it's had an impact because our Congress people, Sanford Bishop, and others, and our 2 senators they've been in and out of Bibb County about every other month.
And that's going to keep going. That's going to keep going.
It's going to keep going if we vote right.
Right. But that is a huge part of President Biden's legacy right there. We are going to see infrastructure, maintenance, and upgrades that would not have otherwise happened without that vision.
Yeah. And the worst part about it, no Republicans voted for it.
They'll sure take credit.
Didn't vote for it, but they're standing up there with their hand out.
They're standing up there on television when a project goes into one of those communities. So, I mean, we just got to be vigilant. As Michelle Obama says, don't wait for somebody to call you. Just do something.
Do something. That's right. We encourage you to call in if you want to ask either one of our guests a question. Our call-in number is 478-250-1444. Our 2 very special guests are none other than Dr. Tom Ellington, a Wesleyan professor, and also a member of the local Macon-Bibb Board of Elections. And we also have our senator from the 26th, Senator David E. Lucas Sr. And we encourage you to add comments in the chat, but you can also call in 478-250-1444. I want to mention this before I leave the commission. I plan to qualify for the District 1 seat on the Macon Water Authority on September 11th. And I encourage you to join me at the Board of Elections as I make that long walk in to qualify for the board. But before I leave the commission, I want to introduce something that was a request made a year or so ago to do something that commemorates the little girl who was hit and killed on Millerfield Road, there at the intersection where New Clinton Road comes into Millerfield Road. There's a crosswalk there, and I believe the young girl's name was Michaela. And so we want to place a commemorative marker. We're going to call it Michaela's Walk or Michaela's Crossing or something like that. And we're working with our legal department, but we need to make contact with the family, and so that we can include them in the planning for this before I leave the commission on September 11th. So we got to do this quickly. But the county is ready to get it to work on this, but I just need to make contact with the family. So if you're familiar with the family, you know anybody, please contact me or contact them and have them to call me so that we can get with them and pay tribute to their little girl. And I want to do it before. Now, if we don't make that contact between now and then, I'll come back and ask the mayor and administration to do it anyway. But I would like to be a part of that. So I wanted to put that out there before we ran out of time.
That's such a nice and important gesture, and that fits very much in what's been a large part of your legacy, Elaine. I, of course, used to chair the Pedestrian Safety Review Board.
Yeah.
We've had far too many pedestrians die on our streets in the last years because we spent too long designing a transportation system that serves cars rather than people. And every single one of those fatalities is not just a statistic. It's a person who had a name, who had a family, who loved them, and they're an absence in those people's lives now. That doesn't go away.
That's right.
Well, one of the things that has happened, because my other half stayed on me all the time about Gray Highway. If you go down Gray Highway now, you see those mediums on Gray Highway. That is so that people who are in those turning lanes don't get hit when they car. And so you see that now. It's reality. And we're doing some more work. I think the other one is the Stubbs lady who was killed over there off of Gray Highway.
Right.
And my understanding is that the mayor is working on trying to have that done and a
Well,
place
we've
for you to
already
walk
approved sidewalks and lighting for
for
that
that
area.
for that
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
And then of course the other thing is we need to put cameras in dead spots. People are dumping in neighborhoods. There are no lights. Nobody lives on the street. And when you go down, you see tires thrown out, washing machines, refrigerators, furniture, mattresses, and everything. And they are dumping in neighborhoods that don't need it to happen to that neighborhood. And it's because they are dark spots. There's no camera up, so nobody can get a tag number, and it's not lighted. So those areas need to be lighted well, so that you ride down the street and you see somebody jumping in a car, you can ride behind them, get a tag number, and call it in.
Okay. Yeah. On Center Street over off of Gray Highway there, runs parallel to Gray Highway. There's something over there. I understand that there are several other issues that different neighborhood groups have brought to the attention, brought to all of our attention that we are working on. Charlia Foster says, go vote early. Yes, yes, yes. Michelle says, go vote. Wade Horton reminds us that the person who is assisting you, make sure that that's someone you trust, because you want the folks to show you what you're asking them.
Well, and that's
to
especially
show
true if you have difficulty seeing or
Right.
blindness.
Right, right. So all of you are absolutely right. But we've got to do our part. We have got to do our part. Surely, Lester is asking, do any of the repairs assist with the homes that have septic tanks? That's
If they're in the city, you have to deal with it right now under the current water sewer authority. If you do it now, you have to pay the cost for it to get done.
if you connect to the
Sewer system, you have to pay the cost. That is what the problem is. That back during the old days when you had the Macon Water City Commission, people didn't pay attention and people did things illegally. And what happened is you had the Water Sewer Authority to take over from that Macon City Water Commission. And when they took over all the properties and all
the
of the liabilities.
Yes, sir. Now, Pastor Lisa says, sounds like a protest is needed for ABC Liquor Store to get help now from Macon Water Authority with their current no water problem. I viewed a Macon Water Authority meeting about a month ago, and the attorney for Macon Water Authority entered into a back and forth discussion. The owner of ABC Liquor Store was there,
Yeah.
and addressed that Macon Water Authority. And the attorney and I thought it was policy, you don't go back and forth. You allow the visitor to make their statements, and then you address it maybe in committee or whatever, or after the meeting for clarification. But the attorney absolutely, it was like he had the guy in court.
Well,
And they were going back and forth, and he was questioning him and challenging him. I did not like that.
that's what I said about the Macon Sewer Water Authority. I'm the big boy and you the little boy. And it's what I say. And that ain't the way it works. Legislatively, state law wise, the Macon Water Sewer Authority took over all the properties of the former Macon City Water Commission and all liability.
Okay, we had a question. Hildred Jones is asking if we'll continue this program after you leave office. Yes, ma'am. I do have plans to continue Ask Elaine on Wednesdays from 3 to 4. So we just need to tell everybody, let everybody know we do plan to be here unless the station kicks me off. I don't curse but once a year, so they might let me stay on. People have generally agreed with the both of you on what you've been saying. Pastor Lisa continues to encourage all of us, and they agree with Patrick on bringing back the November voting, because the research that these folks who were pushing consolidation, the research that they did showed there was a section on how you can get this passed. What's the best technique and method to use? What do you take advantage of? And one of the things is we don't vote every election like we should. By we, I mean Black folks, brown folks, Democrats. We don't vote every election. And these folks knew it. And they said, well, we'll put it in May and those folks will not go. And sure enough, we didn't have enough to go to defeat this thing. So they're studying us while we're out here fussing with each other about stuff, or who gets credit and who doesn't and stuff. We need to wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed.
That's why I tell you,
All right. Last comment from Dr. Ellington.
Got to get out and vote. Do it early, get it done.
Okay, and thank you so much for being our guest and senator. Last comment.
Wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed. Only time for thinking.
No more backward thinking. Time for thinking ahead. Yeah. Anything else?
The big fish. The big fish bite at night.
Oh, okay. Whatever that means. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for being the best part of WDDO. We'll see you again next Wednesday, 3 p.m. for another edition of Ask Elaine.
Connecting the community through gospel.
The new 107.9 FM, W300EB.
Macon and WDDO 980 AM Perry.